Land is I think the most expensive resource that we have. Density is not looked at negatively, but is looked at as a resource.
Create something which is sustainable, resilient, and also very purposeful.
When we are designing spaces, you have to see we are going to operate it correctly.
Tall building facades are not only the envelope, but it's an energy engine,
Cities are going to grow and cities are going to go vertical because we have a limited area. We can only experience the city when we walk on the streets.
You are just not making an office, you are building an ecosystem for office.
High rise comes with the word high. There's a cost that comes to it.
Why there are no workshop for MEP designs?
We have to move from a reactive repair mindset to a preemptive repair mindset.
We need to have courage to plan for the future, that I would say.
Nothing should fail structurally, nothing should fall off the building. You are separating outdoors and indoors with this little line that you draw, which is the facade.
Today's buildings, it's a long-term asset, it's not a short-term.
We have to design for future also.
Policymakers is on the government side to be able to allow certain amount of innovation.
We just have to open our mind to be a bit more innovative.
Let's welcome our moderator to spearhead this conversation. Put your hands together for architect Sandeep Shikre, founder plus CEO, SSA Architects. I would now like to invite our panelists on stage. Put your hands together. First up joining us is Mr. Ayush Kamalia, project engineer, Trans Solar Energy Technique GmbH. Also joining us on stage is Mr. Rajesh Baiwar, senior vice president, New Building Solutions, Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa, Kone. I'm also inviting Mr. Qutub, Mandviwala, Principal Architect, Mandviwala, Qutub and Associates. Next up joining us, ladies and gentlemen, is Sheetal Bilkar, Founder Director, Urja Building Services Consultant. Next up, put your hands together for Raman Sapru, Director, Design and Engineering at K. Raheja Corp. Next up also joining us is Kiran Kapadia, Founder at Kapadia Associates. Next up joining us is Gautam Basin, Managing Partner at Mirai. May I also please invite Mr. Siddharth G. Sankar, Partner, Sankar and Associates. And also inviting Debashish Mitra, Head of Design and Planning, Sri Naman Group.
And today we are here in a very unique initiative which FOAID began 2 years back, Built India Vision. So the thought here is to take a relevant topic, relevant panelist, relevant dialogue that will focus largely on the issues which are quite need of an hour. So for next 1.5 hours, I'm extremely delighted to have a great panelist with me. There's a broad spectrum of talent here, and 6 of them are architects. There's a MEP expert here, there is a vertical transportation expert here, and some of the architects who have chosen to be in the field of facade and chosen to be in the area of developers, design managers. So we have got a great panel here, well set. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very brief presentation just to set the tone right, and then we are going to engage our discussion about high-rise design challenges. All of us will agree that since last 1 decade, India is in that particular stage of transformation where high-rise is a need and not a greed. You can see that it's absolutely inevitable that every urban metropolis, every urban city has that pressure of a rapid urbanization, and it's naturally pushing us to go to a high-rise and high-density development. Now the task before us, if that is something there on our platter, how do we inclusively, collaboratively and sensibly address this so that we all who are responsible for tomorrow's built environment create something which is sustainable, resilient and also very purposeful. So a small presentation that just gives you an idea about what is the current scenario. I mean, many of us are from city of Mumbai here. You must be remembering, especially Kiran, you would remember the FSI in Mumbai city used to be 1 in suburb and 1.33 in city. From there, now it has reached to a stage where it has reached to a stage of 4 to 6 FSI. And you can see one side the FSI is increasing, the other side the land is becoming less and less. The population is going to go more or less to the 600 million by 0.35. That's a test we have. Now let's compare our Mumbai city with two other cities, Manhattan and Singapore. So if you see the density that we have in city of Mumbai is almost 400 to 600 units per acre, whereas in New York it's 200 to 350 per acre, and in Singapore it's 50 to 150 per acre. So these are two also one of the high density, high rise cities. But if you look at the kind of numbers, we are almost 2 times than these super high density structures. So that makes us our task more and more tough and more difficult. If you see again the residential built environment and the commercial built environment, typically in India, the residential buildings are done by developer and they are transferred to the society. The developer is in the picture for first 3 to 7 years, and then those properties have been given to the end users, community and society perpetually for 40 to 60 years. Whereas in commercial, now it's a good story that we have a owner-owned premises model where all the commercial premises today are owned by a developer and the lessees are occupying those commercial spaces. But again, there we have a different kind of challenges. The needs are increasing. Again, we need to look forward for our environmental sustainability goals and so many things. So both the sectors, residential as commercial and mixed use sector, have their more evolving challenges that are coming up for now. So if you look at again the kind of per capita green space, which is so important to understand, and the per capita green space in Mumbai today is 2 meters square, which used to be 16 square meter earlier 20 years to 25 years back. In New York, it is yet 9 to 12 square meter per person, and in Singapore it is 20 to 35 meter square per person, which is quite healthy. So this is our today's situation. We have only 2 square meter per capita green space, and that is something that we are going to discuss as to how do we come up with more innovative vertical solutions so that we try to improve these numbers to at least what is required for the better living lifestyles. If you look at the engineering things, it consumes almost 2 to 3 times more energy. We have got basements coming in picture because now we have got 3 basements, 4 basements to accommodate parking, the services, the back of the house facility areas. And each of these basements are also going to contribute almost 8 to 12% more carbon footprint on our built environment. So if you have seen the analysis, it says 50% of the buildings are facing challenges are at the operation and the maintenance level. At the design level, they'll all have been successful. This is another scenario that is coming up. All the intellect that has been involved at the time of a built environment is getting done. But what happens after all the designers and all the developers, they move away? And currently that's a new challenge that we are facing and we are going to face. We have to have the capacity building, we have to skill the gap, and there's a lot of gap between the skilled building operational personnel. We need to talk about that also. Elevators, of course, we have got Rajesh here. He'll talk about how the elevators are so important. As we all know that the streets and the by streets are the spines and the arteries of the town planning. The elevators is almost a lifeline for the building. And the comfort is below 35 to 40 seconds. Everybody would not want to wait for the elevator more than 40 seconds. That's what the international and national standard says. So how do you manage that large density, 6 apartment per core, 70-story building, 420 apartments in the building? Everybody wants to go down and come up during the peak time. So elevator and the vertical transportation plays a very important role. And that technology, I personally love that technology because they have been always ahead of us. They have been always coming up with something which is very convincing and very tangible kind of a result. So we're going to talk about that with Rajesh and of course with all my architect colleagues. We talk about the mobility collapse. We are talking about the one car which takes almost 40 square meters. So if there's an apartment of 1,500 square foot who has 2 cars, so a person who owns 1,500 square foot apartment also maintains 800 square foot of a car. So it's a liability. 0.8 of your FSI is a liability that you are carrying for your car. And these are built environments. They will also require a lot of maintenance. They will also require a lot of recurring expenses down the line. So how are we going to manage all about it? Do we really need to look again about our car providing policies and so on? Similarly, in a commercial building, we see that there is a lot of requirement of commuting distances, and number of cars, 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers is also one of the very important aspects that goes along with all our habitable areas. Fire and safety, of course, it's very important. As we are going taller, the new NBC chapter has been established just now for 2025, and compliments to all the code writers there. They have come up with an excellent fire norms, which is internationally comparable. So it's also one of the important aspects. Now, again, we develop a built environment with all those facilities, but does the end user is aware as to how to utilize them perpetually and how to make sure that what exactly needs to be done in terms of challenges and if any fire hazards. So that also needs to be discussed on this particular forum. Climate stress, as all of you know that we have already signed 2070 as a net zero carbon. So if we have to go net zero carbon, the construction industry will have to go net zero by 2050. So there is a lot that needs to be done. We don't have our numbers in our place. We don't know exactly our embodied carbon numbers. The operational carbon has just begun to getting evaluated. It's yet long, long way to go. And we are large. A lot of European countries could mitigate that because they are small. All their numbers are intact. So this is also climate resiliency is one of the very important aspects that we'll have to look into it. Facade. Now, facade is very important because tall building facade takes the challenges of a high wind pressure, and tall building facades are not only the envelope, but it's an energy engine, you know. So we need to be also very mindful to understand when we take a decision at the inception, what kind of an envelope design that we want to do, how it is contextual, how it is more functional for the different kind of a microclimate responses. So at the end of the day, we all know that we are into a situation where at least I feel that next 2.5 decades, there is no other way but for all of us to accept this challenge that everything will go tall. The same thing will slowly maybe trickle into other cities. Like we have a friend coming from Coimbatore, we would like to hear from him. And what is the message generally that this forum would like to give it to the society from their avid experience in the field? That's what we are going to discuss henceforth. So I would like to begin my first question with Kiran. Kiran, you have more than 4.5 decades of a practice, and large practice of yours is also in Mumbai. You have seen the city of Mumbai now growing to Mumbai 2, Mumbai 3. There are almost 9 municipal corporations which have evolved in last 1 decade around Mumbai. And the original Mumbai and the outskirts of Mumbai have become almost 3.5 times, which is a good strategy because you need to decongest the main city. While doing that, there has been a revision in the development control rule of Mumbai city. There has been a revision of outside Mumbai a development control which is called Unified DCR, and Mumbai city has a DCPR 2034. From your lenses, do you think the way the policymakers, government, doing the regional plan, is it going in a right direction? Is the right strategy to do? What are the gaps, if at all, you have identified and what you would like to advocate that needs to have a correction at this stage or maybe as we go ahead? And generally, what's your overall view for next 1 decade to all the young architects over here?
Thank you, Sandeep. I think you've raised the kind of key issues that face us. Unlike a lot of cities in the Western world, we obviously have a problem in terms of our population is increasing, not decreasing. While in the West, either the population is fairly standard or stagnant and reducing in the cities and stuff like that. As people kind of get to retirement age, they want to move away from the cities, etc. In India, the condition is exactly the opposite. Young people want to come into the city, they don't want to leave the city. So I think that pressure is something that is inevitable, that I think we will kind of continuously face that. I feel, honestly speaking, that I think the city is growing, as you correctly say, in all directions. So now I think we can't think of Mumbai. I think it's a greater kind of metropolitan region where everything kind of comes together, and So I think there are 2-3 issues. So one, of course, is everybody knows that nodes are getting developed in various areas, right from Navi Mumbai at one end to BKC to Andheri, etc. I think one of the things that I've learned is people want to reduce commute time as much as possible. That's one thing. People are kind of moving. You see, geographically what is happening is that people are moving closer to their place of work. I think that's one trend that is happening, which means that even without design, by sheer force of economics, mixed-use developments are coming up, staying close to your place of work, etc., etc. We've kind of brought up with the model, which is, the British model, where you had work areas or you had trade areas and you had residential areas that were completely kind of segregated. And I think that is, we missed a lot of opportunities, and now I think people are more reactionary. Look at BKC, for example, planned as a completely kind of, office district or work district. And now there's a lot of pressure, I think, along the peripheries of BKC, where people are kind of calling it BKC Annex, BKC this, BKC that, even Kurla. So I think what is happening is that, I think there's a need for a more integrated development in terms of, combining, residential, looking at offices, looking at workspaces, looking at social needs like, cultural centers, restaurants, museums, etc., all coming together. And this land use, which is, very specific to a need, I think needs to change dramatically. I think it's happening, unfortunately, by economic demands, not happening by policy and design. And I feel that policy and design needs to kind of change that quite substantially. Secondly, I also feel strongly that, I think there's a general kind of, high-rise is looked at for some reason or the other as negatively, I think. And that the problem is that, I think we feel that anything which is high-rise is something that is to be looked down upon. I think we have no choice there, for the simple reason that pressure on land is kind of going up all the time. The land is I think the most expensive resource that we have. It's a very limited resource. You can't produce land. That's one thing that you can't produce. And I think, I think housing people is, I think, one of the challenges that the government has. And I think you need to house people, because we don't house people, which is what the mistake that we did in the 50s and the 60s. You get slums coming up, you see, because there is no policy, so you have slums coming up, which means people then find their own ways to provide their own housing. And this is what has happened. And now we are kind of redoing that through slum redevelopment schemes and stuff like that. So I think that, at a policy level, I think we need to relook at density completely, and look at, how we can change our bylaws where, density is not looked at negatively, but is looked at as a resource that we really kind of provide for and things like that. And I think that will require a kind of a shift in mindset, not only from government, but also a shift in mindset from architects, engineers, etc., etc. And I think obviously the private sector responds to things a lot more proactively rather than the government, just because of their size and inertia. I think they take time to respond to that, and by the time they respond to that is quite late. The other issue which you raised up, cut me off if you think I'm overdoing the time, Sandeep, but the other thing is, as you correctly mentioned, is cars. I think that is one big issue. I think we are a very car-driven society, and you had the statistics right, 35, 40 square meters per car. So when you provide, even the bylaws say that, if you have a, apartment which is more than 1,000 square feet, you minimum need to provide 2 cars. Recently, we had somebody from the City of London, a planner who works for the City of London, in our office, and he actually said that abroad in London, you are penalized actually from an FSI perspective for providing cars, which means that if you do a project which has no cars, means you do not provide for one single car in a large development, you get incentive. That's what the city wants. The city wants people to use public transport. They don't want people to use cars. It is a kind of a negative thing that So I think we are the opposite, and I think it's a change of mindset. It's not simple to do. I think because our public transport is still catching up with the pressure, we want to provide more cars. So now we're saying we want more cars. Then you build in the inner city. You have multi-level, kind of robotic or an automated car parks, etc., etc. So I think this car provision, I think, is a very, very key issue. And I know most developers struggle with the cost of providing cars. There's no choice. And then eventually it gets passed on to the end user in the kind of rate that you really do. So I think those are the challenges, and that requires a mindset. I don't think it's a blame game that, A is doing this, B is doing that. But I think, one needs to look at this. I think somebody needs to challenge this whole thing and, re-look at car provision. I think it's going to be big. It'll decongest our roads also, and I think people will be forced to look at using public transport and things like that as a means. So I'm going to leave it at that and open it up for other people. We'll come back again if there's anything.
Yes, certainly. So very well said, Kiran, that compact development. I mean, when you took an example of London, London is also moving from monocentric city to polycentric city. And that is one of the solutions where people are now trying to develop a 1 square kilometer city where you have everything within 1 kilometer what you need primarily. Your office space, your school, your entertainment, your recreation and everything. That naturally will create an ecosystem. Even in Auroville, they are coming up with the new master plan, which is quite exciting, where they want to make sure that 90% of your needs are served by pedestrianized connections. Only 5 to 8% you'll touch your car if required. So that's one of the very important aspects that we need to talk at the city level. And I was stunned when I saw a Shard building, which is 600,000 square foot of a lease. Raman, how many parking there? The entire building has only 12 car parking. Okay. The Willis Tower has 42 car parking for 800,000 square foot. For a similar kind of building, me, Kiran and Qutub will have to provide not less than 1,800 to 2,000 car park. Can you see the comparison between these two?
And this also, just to add to this, is, you're talking about carbon footprint.
Yes.
Pouring so much more concrete, I think that is.
Yeah. So, and also now I would like to say there was very exciting thing which I saw in Singapore, which is there in Toronto and Singapore. Anybody who's developing a building in a particular area, it is mandatory for that developer to give certain space in that compound for the people. So if you are not able to give it on ground, one, Capita, which is a great building there, they have a separate entry exit and a podium at the 12th level, which is available for the community 24/7, 365 days, free of cost. And it works because your Mother Earth is becoming less and less. So how do you make the urban planning more inclusive? Every building has to be lifted on top so that the land belongs to city and the area belongs to the developer. So let me come to Qutub, and I would like to have your thoughts on more or less similar question. While you do such a large gated communities, you also work in many tier 2 cities. How do you see the urban planning, the entire precinct development or the larger development? You are doing a great job for us in Mumbai, which is now shaping up very well. Please share your experience also for that particular job you worked for last so many years.
So thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, FOAID, for putting me up on this panel. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start on that, I also like to add a few things on your previous question, which was there. For sure, the country is moving in a way where people are shifting from rural to urban sector. What we have missed out is the basic infrastructure development. Cities are going to grow and cities are going to go vertical because we have a limited area, especially when we start talking of Mumbai. So the question coming in is, do we need more cars or do we need more public transport or do we need better infrastructure? It is a situation that we are in today. So once we have the infrastructures of these cities prior to the development which is happening, then for sure all these factors will become much more easy. Coming to your second question of my experience, and that is continued from what I'm saying on this, is we had a 16.5 acres of land to redevelop in Mumbai. It was in the heart of the city of Mumbai, and it was somewhere where the roads were 6 meters and 3 meters and 9 meters wide. And we took this opportunity where we said that we are not only going to do individual development where we are just going to pop up buildings, But the first and foremost thing that we are going to do is redefine the infrastructure. As architects, our envelope doesn't stop at the plot boundary. But as architects, our scope, our work goes far beyond it. It talks of the realm, it talks of the pedestrian, it talks about the shopping, it talks about the infrastructure that we can help and develop in the overall city planning. Light, ventilation is all what we are always looking at. And how to create a sustainable development in this area. So we had a great opportunity. We managed to do that. We created wider roads which are from 15 meters to 18 meters. But the carriageways, we all restricted to 9 meters and 7.5 meters. And we focused more and more of how to create larger pedestrian walkways, so to enhance the shopping and the commercial spaces there, to give the city back what it doesn't have. So we as architects have to look at things in a different way. Whenever we get an opportunity, we have to think not only for the project that we are doing, but we have to look at it at the urban level. We have to look at it that how it helps the overall infrastructure, how it helps the overall public spaces that we are going to create, how it helps and enhances the beauty of the city. We can see the skyline of many cities, but we can only experience the city when we walk on the streets. And today, to experience the city of Mumbai, what we need is these pedestrian spaces to experience what Mumbai is. Thank you.
So I would take it ahead, Qutub, when you get a project where you are developing a particular gated community for a developer, and maybe that's the size of a 4 acre of a plot, how much you along with your clients are conscious about the abutting infrastructure, the abutting built environment that's going to contribute on your particular gated community? Is there an awareness that as a social responsibility, we should widen our scope of work beyond the plot that we are developing? And has there been any initiative where you and your clients have gone to the municipal council and have requested for such teething issues which are around your compound? If you want to share any of such examples, it would be great.
So in this project, we have managed to do that. We don't have a compound wall. We have what we see in international cities where we have just a pedestrian walk and the building starts from there. We have the eyes on the streets which are there as the shopping which is there. And we can see it. I think it's already happening in different parts. You can see it in BKC. Some of the buildings have got the public realm which is opening up into the streets which is there. You don't need to have these kind of fencings, and you don't need to have.
More inclusive.
So yeah, it has to be more inclusive. And you asked me a question also on how is the urban factor happening in different other cities which we are working on, So every city has a different factor which is attached to it, and every city has a different user-centric people and the clientele that we are working on. So in some of the other cities, like we work in Ahmedabad and we work in Rajkot, etc., and Bhubaneswar and all, where it is much more easier to connect all these factors and to give more inclusive planning at the urban level, and to take it and work on it rather than just working on it as a project which is there.
Sounds good. So let me now move on to Siddharth. We have heard two big boys talking about the big city. So we would like to hear from you. How is it in Coimbatore and the areas where you are large practices? How do you foresee the overall expectance of the people? Do you see that those cities will also move on to the similar kind of situation where it will be a high density, high rise, or is there something else that is planned over there?
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for it. I guess I'm the country mouse amongst the city mice here. So I'll just give you a precursor of what Coimbatore is like today. It is the second largest district of Tamil Nadu, with a population of about 15 lakh in the city corporation area and a population of about 30 lakh in the larger Coimbatore area. The interesting thing here is the corporation limit is about 642 square kilometer, whereas the entire city limit, the district of Coimbatore, is about 7,470 square kilometers. So this is a huge thing. And in the 642 square kilometers, you have about 15 lakh people. And in the rest of about 6,400 square kilometers, you have the rest of the 15 lakh people. Also, what's happening is now, if you look at Coimbatore, it is the engineering, the medical, and the IT hub of Western Tamil Nadu. So it's a mesh of cities now. So all these cities are getting interlinked, and you have all these highways. So it's now becoming like this continuous, large metropolitan area. I think the problems of Bombay probably helped me preempt what would have to happen to Coimbatore soon. So the way the city is growing is it's growing in a lot of these real estate developments, and it's spreading. It's spreading. I mean, it's a lot of suburbia. It's spreading in a lot of places. Why do people want to go to these kind of villa developments or apartment developments? Because they want this sort of packaged infrastructure, which is not there in the city. But the problem is there is not a good transportation solution. And because this is getting spread all over, there's again a dependency of cars. So that is probably one of the largest problems the city is facing. The traffic is as bad as Mumbai, or for that matter, anywhere else within the city, right? And so there is a real push towards vertical growth. Currently, the tallest building in Coimbatore is not more than 45 meters. But then there is a real push. There's a new guidelines that have come in, which is pushing the building heights more because land costs are shooting up. But interestingly, there is absolutely no effort being done on public transportation. The central government recently rejected a proposal for a metro for Coimbatore, which is now a big political thing that's going on. But let's leave the politics aside. This was the time to do a nice metro in Coimbatore because, I mean, you do it when traffic is comparatively manageable. So there is an absolute push towards vertical growth, but at the same time, there is a certain amount of, people get into vertical developments with a certain amount of trepidation because they're not used to it. But you're being pushed towards that. I think that is where examples like Singapore, where, you need to have more permeable, ground spaces. You need spaces for, culture of the city to come through because there is a certain sameness to all cities. And especially after COVID, the migration rates to cities like Coimbatore has been incredible. People like Sridhar Vembu of Zoho has been pushing for, people to invest in cities like Coimbatore. It's coming up with one of the largest Zoho hubs in the country.
That's exactly I was pointing out. See, Mumbai particularly now has a problem of no land available. Now 70% of the projects in Mumbai are redevelopment. So there is a huge challenge in spite of having so many good thoughts to implement them, because most of those areas, government lands have been encroached by the slums. So I think it's a right time for probably you to sensitize all the policy makers and make sure that you have an opportunity now to develop all those things.
If you look at the corporation areas, there's a large amount of redevelopment projects coming in because his point about work from home or working close to home is probably the most sustainable solution in India, right?
True.
Because our problem is we have the rules, but our enforcement is terrible. And I think that seems to be the problem with most cities. I mean, that's a, it's a consistent problem across tier 1, tier 2, smaller villages, everything. If the enforcement were right, a lot of these problems will not be there. The rules are not so bad. So I think there is a lot of push towards redevelopment within the city areas, even in tier 2 cities like Coimbatore. So that's kind of where we are.
True. So coming to Raman. Yes. So as you can see, I mean, I remember many years back, all the commercial spaces used to be only in South Mumbai. And it was typical British model of a town center. And everything will be in town center related to the work, related to the education, related to the court. So the workspace was in port area, South Mumbai area. And there was, of course, a luxury residential areas were there. Rest of the things were coming to the island city up to Mahim, and then the suburbs started getting developed. But over a period of time, rightly so, the first large master plan came is a Bandra Kurla complex, where we had a central business district, and it became successful over a period of time of almost now 25 years. I would say it is a successful model where there are a lot of commercial hubs are there. Then Mumbai city saw the auction of mill lands, and suddenly 5 acre, 6 acre, 8 acre of a land parcel started becoming visible in different nooks and corners of Mumbai, and typically those were utilized for offices because the IT policy came in picture and there was an incentive FSI was given. And then the mind space took place in the western suburb. Everybody thought it will be a failure, but it became a super successful thing, and it started becoming more of a polycentric commercial hubs. So what's exactly is your company strategy now to develop future commercial hubs? And also, number one, as far as master plan and the overall strategy for the development, and when you look at the building architecture for henceforth project that you are doing, how do you see and what are the necessary things? Because most of these are centrally air-conditioned premises, that culture is yet there. How are you looking at it from the passive strategy for sustainability? A little long question, but I think you'll have to address that because you are the one who's from the commercial background.
So, thank you, Sandeep. Thank you very much. So your question is a very layered question, and there are multiple layers to it. So let me, for the sake of simplicity, split into layers. So one, what you raised was the CBDs. So basically, earlier it was South Mumbai, started shifting towards BKC, and it was, it was a very well dedicated effort of the government to shift it towards northwards. And obviously now there are different micro markets for offices also right now. So that's your first question. The second question is, how we look at, polycentric offices at various places. So as these are growing. So that was your second one. Third is sustainability you're saying in offices, how do we see it? And fourth, in a city like Mumbai, there's definitely, this forum is for high-rise. So high-rise is also a very important, whether it's an office or this thing, you can't shy away from a high-rise office building. So coming to the first, as densities keep moving, you can't shift. Earlier, it was a linear density in Mumbai, and if you see, it was, Nariman Point, or for that matter, South Mumbai was the hub. The Mantralaya was there. All the work was being done there on that side. So whatever the affinity to government work is there, or whatever this thing, so all that used to happen in that area. So that was the first business district. As the things started growing up, whether it was financial centers or whether it was IT, ITES, so the things started moving. So things started moving, the offices started moving towards northward. And there's when the CBD started coming, the BKC CBD. Then likewise, you just said about Mindspace. So it was in Malad, the office. It was a very dedicated effort of starting the office areas in this thing, because what was happening is people were coming from the north towards the south. And it was a huge, actually, if you see, it's a tremendous push on the infrastructure of this thing. So it was an experimental effort, which actually proved to be right. As you are making workplaces closer to the home, so that is where the walk to work started, at least as far as Mumbai is concerned. So we started northwards and it worked. And then the density started growing in those pockets. So if you see now, New Bombay also is similar. So we have office spaces. So Mindspace parks are there. So it's not a one building, it's not a two building, it's actually a cluster of buildings. And it's a city by itself, it's a city in city. So that is how the development has shaped up. So today, whether it is office or it's a residence, you need a complete ecosystem. You can't have just an office, a desk working and this thing. You need a complete ecosystem in an office building. And nothing better than if you have an office park. So that's how this concept started growing up. That's how this started reinforcing. And when one thing leads to another. So it was obviously incremental things, but which proved out to be this. So that's how the concept of the business park started, in a city like Mumbai. Now, the second is, as you said, you like it or, I mean, whether we like it or we hate it, high-rise is the order of the day and it's going to stay. I mean, now whether you see Hong Kong, you see New York, you see Shanghai, you see any other part of the world, the densities are going to be centered and it's going to grow around it. So today, if I say Hong Kong may be crossing actually 10 to 12 FSI. So it's much more denser. But only thing is, we have to build along with it. We have to build, as I said, it has to be complete. It has to be ecosystem has to be developed. It can't be in isolation. You are just not making your office. You're building an ecosystem for office. So that's what we have to be, conscious of. And today's buildings, whenever you construct, so it's a long-term asset. It's not a short-term. So there has to be a lot of adaptive reuse of the buildings. COVID has taught all of us. So how the buildings change, there has to be a lot of repurposing can be, in a 10 years time, things change. So you have to use, these are capital assets. You can't just in 10 years bring down a building and start. So you have to think today how there has to be a building reuse at a later, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line. So that adaptive reuse has to be part of the planning, more particularly in these office buildings and all, which are going to, change. Now, sustainability, see, today we owe this planet to our future generation, and that's what I believe in. So none of us, whether it's very important for all of us to, whatever we can preserve, protect, and nurture this planet, we should do. Whether it's a small steps, big steps, we should. And more in buildings like, we were talking about power and all. So it's like we look at EPI performance index. So there are multiple matrix sheet which we look at. So when we are actually looking at a sustainability index of a building. So
I have one question to you,
sure.
Raman, which only you can. See, most of the residential complexes are transferred to the society, and those are bunch of a society. All of your premises are owner-owned premises. You touched upon a very good point, adaptive reuse. Are you open to give your parking lots to the people on weekend for them to use as a flea market, or them to use as a festival of arts and the artisans? Because those are remaining empty on the weekends and doing nothing. So you hold such a large millions and millions square foot of a premises which are actually doing nothing on the weekend.
So Sandeep, is actually a very good question. Again, two parts to it. First is whether it can be used, yes. How it can be used, definitely we are using it currently. On a larger purpose for a city, how do we use it? It's a regulation issue. So I'll go one by one.
It's owned by you, so you have
So wherever we have a mixed use, I can give a very classic examples. See, normally on malls, the traffic high density is on Saturday and Sundays. And mixed use buildings, Saturday and Sunday offices are generally closed, less number of parking. So what we do is, we try to fit in, all the weekend traffic into those office parkings. Now, not only that, so wherever there are, the parking lots, we actually we had gone with a proposal to the government so that we can use it for a community purpose, where we can have the last parking level, maybe a higher height or this thing, we can have air conditioning to it, and it can be used from time to time, so that it can be used for a larger, which is already in discussion, but obviously government also has to look at various things. It's a safety, it's a regulation, other things also have to be used. So coming to your question, yes, we do. When we actually plan, we look at all these things, because this cross-utilization of the spaces is very important. See, every developer wants to, sweat every square feet of this thing in a very reasonable manner. So, and if we can use it like parking lots a lot, this thing. I'll leave a thought with all of you. Consider, we have a driverless cars. Consider all Uber, they're all driverless, your own cars. Imagine you're coming to office and sending your car back to a parking lot which is somewhere else. You will save the burden of, building so much of parking. So the roads, narrowing of roads, you park it on the road. So, that's gone. Think, if there's a driverless, we always think on the negative side. Think on the positive side, how it leaves the impact, how this is going to change. And maybe it's going to change, maybe 5 years down the line. Nobody has an answer today. So things can change, and things can be actually very different than today what we see.
True. So I, just before I continue to Devashish, I feel you have a very important and a vital role, because if I personally foresee if the district cooling will come, you will be the first proponent to get that in our place. Because district cooling requires a critical mass whereby you can come up with an absolutely wonderful sustainable strategy for such large energy guzzlers.
So, as I said, we look at when we build a building, we look for EPI indexes. Obviously, EPI index, what is today, what we are going to do 10 years down the line, 5 years down. And wherever we have business parks, we have actually started now looking at, how we can have a CBDs over there. Does a city need it? I mean, yes, but can the infrastructure be created? It's a questionable thing.
Yeah, so there are some interesting things which I'm going to talk to Kiran. Kiran has done a very large master plan. He's been doing very large master plans. Qutub has been doing. So I think we have to think beyond a particular development, and together we have to think a development as a cluster development, as a city's ward development. Suddenly the whole scenario changes. When you look at a building, you are thinking of its requirement in a particular way. When you're looking at a community or a larger precinct, suddenly the numbers are different, the diversification factor is different, the consumption factor is different, and so on, So, Debashish, now one of the most, I always feel when I work for a developer, it's the toughest job. Because when we design houses for a particular person, we know their likings, dislikings. And I think one of the most challenging and a risky affair that you are doing, whereby you decide to build 1,000 apartments, 2,000 apartments, not knowing who will be actually your buyer, thinking about 2-bedroom would be so much, 4-bedroom would be so much, and then purely living to your fate after you launch the project to see how it responds. How do you do that? I mean, now suppose if you are thinking for next 5-year strategy, how do you develop a design program, and how do you understand the density, how do you understand the end users, target audience, price factor, everything? I mean, as a developer shoes, how does that whole process starts?
Thank you, Sandeep. And like I was telling you before, you always give me the most difficult questions. But yeah, so when we are developing a program, of course, there is the business part of it, which is a pretty obvious thing. You do your market studies and all of that, come up with the program. That's one part of it. The other thing that we sit down together and we have a discussion on is that what are we trying to create? Now, most of you would know that we, as the developer that I am with, we have not been one of the biggest developers. We have been one of the people who have just done limited, but now we are going into a large expansion, so we are taking on a lot. Like one of the projects that you are doing, if you see the way we had developed the program, it is exactly what the others have been talking about, that it becomes a self-sufficient environment, and that is how we are developing all of the functions that will come within the entire cluster. Now, when that happens, and one of the principal questions that you had asked me before is that how do you give back to the people what you're taking away from them when you go up? Now, all the examples that we've taken about the other countries, if you see that high-rise comes with the word high, which means high maintenance, high cost, all of that. So most countries, the high-rise are populated by people who earn high and not middle class and lower middle class. And that is what we are populating with the new redevelopment proposals. Bombay doesn't have any land anymore, so we are redeveloping. We are putting PMA housing schemes where you have like these 470 square foot apartments. A person who was used to living on the ground or living in a chawl, which was a wonderful system, they are being transported to the 40th floor. And there's a cost that comes to it. Will they be able to maintain? I mean, we have Kone out here who's talking about elevators, high speed. You talked about 35 second to 40 second waiting times. Now, all of these are expensive not only to install. The installation, fine, we do. It's a fraction of the cost of the FSI that we harvest out of a plot. But what about the people who are going to live there? They have to keep this going. They need to have high maintenance crews. They have to have their AMCs in place. You put facades up which are glass, which gives me a lot of carpet area. But on the other hand, what's going to happen is you need to clean those facades. You have huge air conditioning costs. Even the poorest of people nowadays, as opposed to when I was a small boy, have air conditioners in their house. Now they're going to install these and they're going to run with high bills. So consciously, one of the things that we've been talking about is that, and you are aware of it because you're doing one of the projects with us, is that we keep dissuading you from putting a lot of glass. We concentrate on, like exactly what Qutub was saying, that the lower part of the building is the most important part of the building, because that is where we are giving back them some degree of community feel which has been taken away from them. So as an example, let's say you know the Chawls, or people who have lived in Bombay, grown up, we know the Chawls. It is to be a shared lifestyle where you have small families. They don't need a place to send their kids away when they go to work. Just goes to the next house and starts living. You have common spaces. The big corridors in the front, which used to be open, used to be the place where they used to live their life. They used to just go into sleep. Now, we are replacing them with large corridors, which because of your CFO rules has got one so-called light and ventilation at the end of it. It doesn't work. So you have to give back. Again, I'll take the example of the one that you're doing, is that we insisted that, yes, in the present rules, the corridors are free of FSI. I can make 20 apartments per floor. But we said, no, you still come up with a smaller group of people on the floor so that they are able to interact with each other and the things that I'm taking away from them. So we have a creche. We talk about a creche. We talk about now how do you give greenery, something which we all as Mumbaikars are starved for. Yes, we give our so-called regulatory open spaces around there, but then we make use of this podium, which is a construct of the number of cars that we're providing, and we do it up in such a way that it becomes really interactive. We don't give them facilities which they can't maintain. We had a large interaction with this. We are doing about a 3,000 or 4,000 people housing. Now, we had a discussion with them in which I posed them the question, do you want a swimming pool? Some said yes, the younger lot said yes, and all the rest said no, we don't want it. We don't want that. Give us a nice place where we can play cricket, we can have our Ganpati Mandal. And that is what we've been trying to do, is look at that, have punch windows, make the windows just optimum enough that it gives you the light and ventilation that you require, nothing more. It's not for how it looks as tall glass buildings. So that is how, one is the area program, which is a fairly easy thing to do. But when it comes to what are the extra bits that we are giving, it means more construction for us, yes. Again, the cost of it disappears when you actually look at the business potential of that.
Sounds great, yeah. So, of course, I'm going to come to you a little later. About the dialogue between you and your end user. That's going to be my question to both of you again. But before that, let me talk to our main people who make our dream come true. We all talk, we all design, and they are the ones who actually add the tangible engineering aspects to all our built environment. So, Sheetal, now you also have a practice since last more than 2 decades. 3 decades, yeah. So, you have seen the shift from the low-rise, mid-rise, high-density to high-rise. My specific question to you, and you please feel free to give a frank feedback to us. From MEP expert lenses, do you think everything is going around you today is right? If not, what is exactly not? Do you think the MEP design that has been developed now with the design-based reports which are created for these large high-density, which is happening first time, right? Are they going in the right direction? Are the designers aware about the tasks that they have before them? Are the end users aware of what they are getting into when they are buying an apartment into a large gated community of 800 apartments? How do you see the ecosystem around you? Right from concept stage to execution stage and post-completion stage.
Thank you for this question. I think when we talk about high-rises and especially in densities, usually, everybody talks about grand architecture, facades, and everything, but nobody talks about MEP, which actually gives life to that building. And when you design for high rises, especially in dense cities, where every inch is precious, every watt per square feet matters, and where every second in emergency situation is critical. I think MEPF plays a major role. And sorry to say to all the architects here, and even developers, definitely that much importance is not given to MEPF designers.
No, specify. When you say not given, means what?
Means when you design the spaces, okay? Like I said, I'm practicing for last 30 years in this field. So if you see the load cycles, okay? So we have seen the shift from lighting load per se. If you see, we were having first fluorescent and LEDs. Now we have, we had CFL in between and then LED. Now if you see cooling load, it started with window ACs, then you had you have chillers, you have VRV. Now we are talking about district cooling, you know. Similarly, in plumbing also, we have now low flow fixtures. So traditionally, when we design the overall, our first step is concept stage, right? At the design stage, when we start with the calculation, water calculation, electricity calculation. So at that stage, when we design, we have to look at how the load has shifted, okay? We have to design for future also. So if we see all these things, we have reduced the load per square feet. But at the same time, if you see the recently, we have added loads again. So if we talk about EV charging, like we were talking about parkings, right? So many parkings are added now. And at the same time, like with MOEF, you have to give 25% parking areas, you have to give EV chargers. Then if you are going for IGBC, then it is 30%. So now, whatever load we were saving all these times, so when the per square feet load was reduced, now again EV charging, we have to add this load, right? Now, if you are talking about when after we, developers sell the flats, now interior designers come into picture. And when they start designing the high-end residential interiors, they start specifying. Now the latest trend is online geysers. So now the online geyser load is 5 times more than the traditional geysers. Now whatever we had saved per square feet, now this has again increased. And when we sit across the table with all the architects, we have always a fight between the shaft sizes, the substation sizes, the DG sizes, panel areas. So always each square feet, each square inch also we have to fight, with architects. And that fight is always there. And, in fact, 3-4 days back only we had this discussion with one of the developers. And where we were telling them, ki, okay, when we are designing the bus duct, we need to go for one size higher because we have to anticipate this load of online geysers, which we are seeing over last few years, which clients are asking for, when they are occupying the space, they want to change their meter, they want to have the additional, cables. But when we are talking about bus ducts, how do we do that?
I agree with you. MEP is, of course, on one side is constantly upgrading, the demands will keep on going up, the lifestyle will keep on changing. So it's a very interesting stage. You'll agree that no designer, no developer would like to make a compromised building. So I personally feel the issue is on both sides. There has to be also a very, very thoughtful discussion at the inception of a project,
Correct.
which talks about the life cycle of that particular built environment and also giving some smart ideas as to how these things can be upgraded. See, okay, because once you do, that's why we have the Revit model coming in picture, which kind of allows us to understand if there are any clashes and so on, So now you have artificial intelligence, you have machine learning, so you have tangible tools to put forward strongly and say Plus, now the new ECS-BC code, which is internationally comparable. I mean, if you'll see, the code is fantastic. I was part of that code writing committee. Everything is wonderful. So you have all the system around you. So why do you always face this problem?
So I'll tell you, problem is planning everything is good. So you have to look at MEP with 360 degrees. It is not only design. You have to look at the operation and maintenance also, right? So when we are designing spaces, you have to see whether we are going to operate it correctly. It has to be maintained properly. When you are talking about BIM, okay, we are doing it. You know, we work with so many developers. So we are doing it at the design stage. But whether we are taking it to the operation stage, are we giving that models to FMs, like facility managers? Are we giving it to them? When we are talking about IoT, we are implementing in few of the projects, but are we maintaining it properly? Because if you implement all these systems and then don't look at it holistically, like if you are not calibrating IoTs, then there will be a drift and you will get false alarm, and then what was the purpose of it, you are not able to, achieve it. So you have to look at it holistically. It has to be a 360-degree approach. And like you have workshops for architects when you, design your buildings. Why there are no workshop for MEP designs? Why MEP as a subject is not discussed holistically with all the stakeholders?
Yeah. So I would partially agree with you, but at the same time, you'll have to also accept that there have been wonderful examples where we have a great architecture, where the MEP designs have been award-winning, have been performing very well. But yes, we are going through that transformation stage, and especially to the young practitioners and the evolving young talent, it's very important to sensitize them, to make sure that, as you said very correctly, MEP is the soul and heart of the entire building's functioning as the structure is there. And I do also partially agree sometimes while giving the space, because there's always a lot of pressure on a designer for every square foot to be utilized as a revenue generating area, but we need to balance that thing. So probably the answer is to have a constant dialogue, and with certain convincing indices and numbers, if those facts have kept ahead, then I think the battle is won. That is more important.
True. That's what. All of us need to work together about the common purpose, and I think then only it will be achieved.
True.
Can I add to that? I mean, we're doing our first job in Mumbai, and we do a lot of healthcare work. So the amount of services that is involved in healthcare, we're doing an oncological facility, is tremendous. I think there is as much responsibility on the policymakers, on the government side, to be able to allow innovation, to be able to allow certain amount of innovation with respect to fire and this thing, where you can probably go back to them and discuss and ask them to give us some leniency on certain things, I mean, without compromising safety. Recently, probably one of the most receptive government organizations that we worked with is the one in Amaravati. We've been able to go back with solutions along with the MEP designers, using artificial intelligence to sort of reduce sizes. And the government is willing to look at it, form a committee, and then, give us that amount of leeway to work. I don't even want to call it leeway, give it that amount of, elbow room to work with it. But I think it's as much as, a governmental issue as it is a developer or an architect or an MEP person's issue.
Yes, of course. It's always a collaborative exercise. I agree with you. So Gautam, being an architect and a facade expert, especially focusing on a high-rise and high-density projects, what is your take on this? And you have been here after having an international exposure for earlier of your practice. How do you typically see the comparison between the global practices, the practices which are evolving here? What's your message to all the designers and the proponents here from facade point of view?
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, FOAID. I would not like to call myself an architect. It's almost like turning red in front of the stalwarts on the stage here. But I think the key difference, and it's not just unique to India, it's unique to South Asia, Southeast Asia, where large part of my career was, is people and client walking up to us saying, I want the facade to be zero maintenance. And we take that with a pinch of salt and go back to the drawing board, scratching our heads, ki zero maintenance kya hota hai? And I think to the larger effect, building practices come back and facades get maintained, where the building ownership, like Ramanji said, stays with the owner, stays with the developer. Where it gets handed over, you just keep your fingers and toes crossed that people understand and realize how complex these systems are, whether it's ranging from MEP to complex facade cleaning systems to fire safety systems. I think they often get ignored as well, unfortunately. One thing that we always take into account is that you may not get the love and care of whatever you've designed down 15 years, 20 years, but things that are absolute non-negotiables are safety. Nothing should fail structurally, nothing should fall off the building. Number two is environmentally, you are separating outdoors and indoors with this little line that you draw, which is the facade, and a person should be comfortable on the interiors. And much to the disappointment of the architects on the panel, aesthetics takes number 3. I mean, visually how the building ages is important. It should not look like it's aged quite poorly. So system choices, finish choices, etc., material choices, they all come into play. But one thing that was very interesting that I think was part of your presentation also, that there is a certain replacement cycles that different component goes through. And I saw a presentation during my young days of a German architect who said that foundations are designed for 100 years, structure for 50, facade for 25, mechanical, highly debatable 10 to 12, give or take, IT systems, interior finishes for about 5, and they all run in multiples. So your IT systems will change 10 times over a 50-year structural shelf life. I think most people don't understand the facade also sits at 25. Now, obviously, with optimum maintenance, you could stretch that to 30, a little bit more. But it should change because technology evolves. Obviously, within facades also, there are certain components that can go through change much faster, much quicker. Seals degrade faster. They need to change. Glass technology evolves every 10, 12 years. You have significantly better products available. They can be replaced. Structure, coatings, finishes, etc. go on for 25, but I think 25 is where you should draw the line and figure out, and I think things are changing. Parts of buildings that I was involved in internationally, they are now seeing recladding happening, and it's really heartening to see adaptive reuse coming through as well, where the building interiors are changing. In India, I think situation is different there. I'm working on a lot of recladding jobs now, which is a refreshing change from 10, 12 years ago where it was all new build. But unfortunately, buildings do not see 25th year because the financial situation and the pressures are such that by the end of 25th year, that piece of land becomes so expensive, almost creating pressure for the building to be demolished, and somebody comes in with a new idea. I think that's the reality we're living with in Mumbai. Like you said, there's no land available. Most of the projects are redevelopment. But I think we, picking up collective thoughts from everyone here, I think adaptive reuse, trying to be sensible about our choices, designing systems that components could be replaced instead of demolishing the entire thing and rebuilding it. And again, trying to take safety, environment, aesthetics, somewhat in that order. I think that's typically what we follow.
That's very interesting. I mean, it was also that one has to understand that the facade also has a life of 25 years, and one must keep a provision for major refurbishment of the facade. That's a very good point, So, I mean, we have been talking about the prefab structures, we have been talking about manufacturing the building rather than constructing the building because of the carbon footprint and the pressure of these buildings to be done faster. So again, I'm seeing, personally, I'm going to foresee that there will be a lot of paradigm shift in everything will become like a pods and they'll get assembled in near or long-term future, even in the tall buildings. Coming to Rajesh, like vertical transportation, tall buildings wouldn't have come in existence if your industry wouldn't have been there. And as I always say, we are always fascinated with you people, because you always are ahead of us and making all our dreams come true. We want to go 500-meter tall, you are ready. We want to go 600-meter tall, you are ready. Whatever it is, it seems like you have a good control on the industry that you are handling. Again, I mean, now, do you see that everybody is understanding the vertical transportation in the right way? Is everything going properly? Question number one. And second question, which I keep asking whenever I meet you, how are you going to maintain so many of your installations? Now your installations are going 10x. So do you have that kind of a skilled capacity building? Because it's a service industry. It's not that you give it one time and people have consumed it. So give me answer on both fronts.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking this question. Firstly, yes, we strongly believe elevator is lifeline of the building. Without elevator, high-rise doesn't exist. And today, the question you ask, is it at the right place? As a equipment, yes, I would say. But as we are discussing about complete ecosystem and to be a integral part of the system, we need to have a lot of learning. And that starts from, in our view, when you conceive the complete ecosystem, like you spoke about polycentric city, that time elevator aspect along with people flow, and people flow we strongly believe in, it should be conceived. We discussed two examples. Just to put strengthen my point, I'll explain two examples we talk. Shard tower from the metro station up to elevator going to the office. You don't have to use any public transport, private transport. You get into it, there are access control doors. We also make doors, turnstiles. All this integral thinking needs to come to Mumbai, which we have seen in Singapore, we have seen in London. And let me tell you, while we discussed the developed city, I was very amazed to see new capital city, Cairo. How they are planning, they are developing city like us. But they are thinking from entirely people flow perspective from start to end. And from that point of view, good news is technology is available in India. We at least have everything. We have turnstile, access control, doors, and technology to ensure it. And not only that, now we have started doing workshop with the developers to make them aware what technologies we have. For example, now it is possible to make 1 kilometer tall building possible. Earlier it was not possible with ultra-rope technology what we have. For that we are doing workshops with various developers, Raheja, and that we can do it. So first part, technology is available. We need to have courage to plan for the future, that I would say. And second part, where we are little bit conservative, is capacity planning. And here I will say that all stakeholders are responsible. Whenever, I will be very straight, architect, MEP, and we also. Whenever we sit on the table, reducing elevator, we also buckle down. Okay, that's fine. I'll tell you now, just to give you an example, commercial spaces, Raman. Europe and Singapore, they plan capacity planning 15 to 20%. In 5 minutes, entire building should be evacuated or get in. How many buildings in Mumbai have 15 to 20%? To best of my knowledge, one. So that we need to have courage to plan for future and invest for it. So here we are also guilty. We also don't stand to our point. I will not say that the blame goes to on the other side, but here we collectively, all stakeholders need to have courage to plan better so that 35 to 45 millisecond waiting time you showed will come down like Singapore, and this 90 seconds for fire evacuation will come down to 60 like what we see in Europe. You're part of the second question, how we are going to maintain this elevator. So definitely, I would say that skilled manpower is an issue. And we have to invest a lot for it. And from our side, at least we started, like Chitkara University, we have started course for elevator maintenance. We are taking here. And here, since Siddharth is sitting here, is from Coimbatore. Tamil Nadu is a shining example. They have started elevator course in ITI. Probably the only state they could see the future and they started. All states should start this. Otherwise, we will have these challenges always available. We will have to depend on the unskilled level, unskilled people, and then that problem will rise. Lastly, I have only 2 points. Safety is always ignored here. So safety part, and that is linked to with lift code. Now we have lift standard available in India, 17900. Mumbai lift code is still quite enforced, I would say, not fully. But across India, the situation is very, very, I have to use this word, not healthy, pathetic. So one thing, if you want me to do to change this, is uniform lift code enforcement across India. Like we have done for pollution control, like there is a BS norm. So like that, if we do it, immediate transformation will happen. And I think the future is bright. But with all hearing from all the experts, town planning experts like you, I think we can plan for the future, and definitely we can change the situation. Thank you.
Great, great. People have been also talking about transit management. It's not only the vertical transportation, but today people have been talking about calculating the time from a person has entered the gate till he or she reaches her workstation. So they're talking about everything that they have to cross, right? From the first turnstile to the second turnstile to their parking, from their parking spot to the elevator, going to their floor, and from that floor to access control floor. So it has now reached to a science where it's a horizontal plus vertical movement. Is Kone doing anything in that particular space?
Yeah, definitely. Turnstile we have already. Doors we are manufacturing, and we are also helping plan complete people flow design. Not only destination control is about elevators, but people flow from the entrance of the building access control till the last point where he stands. Complete planning, design consultancy is available with us, and we can have workshop with the architect to do that.
Yeah, so because everybody has a smartphone, so there is RFID reader on your smartphone.
Yes, RFID is possible.
And they actually profile your movement
Yes.
and ensure that if your parking is on a P4, by the time you park your car, the elevator is actually coming at
Actually
P4 and
available,
waiting
it is
for
possible.
you and so on.
So
Yeah.
that complete seamless connectivity is possible. In few buildings, I can say Lodha Park, we have given this mobile connectivity. So, but it is just a humble beginning. It's not a end-to-end people flow what we are dreaming of, but that is possible.
Yeah, yeah. That's where I think we are heading towards for sure, because high density, every office premises has 8,000 people coming in, going down, high-rise, 50-story buildings. So the time lost for coming and going also is very important. So we have a very interesting, talented architect again who has chosen to be in the field of sustainability, in the field of passive design strategies, and he also comes with a lot of international background. So Ayush, thanks for joining us. I have come to you last because I would want to hear from you about your experiences and case studies and how these passive design strategies can help over here also, while we are in that particular stage of transformation. With some case studies, if you can. You were telling me just before we met that one building you completed in Sydney, which is in a mass timber and some alternative material approaches. So what are your thoughts, purely focusing on India-centric solution?
Thank you, Sandeep. It's wonderful to be in company with all of you. First thing when I see in India is the lack of mindset rather than the lack of investment, money, or talent. We think that if it is a high-rise, it can be done in one way. It has to be out of steel and concrete. It has to have a centralized ventilation system. It has to be air-conditioned. That's not true. We just have to open our mind. We have to be a bit more innovative, and we can actually broaden our horizon and have a passively designed high-rise as well. Just give an example. A recent building we finished in Sydney. It's the headquarters for an IT company known as Atlassian. A 40-story tall building, and only 25% of the overall spaces are fully air-conditioned. Rest it is hybrid cooling. The cooled air overflows from one space to the other, and in the entire building, around 20% of the spaces are fully naturally ventilated. We did actually a mock-up, a small part of it, and the users were extremely happy to be a part of that environment rather than a closed glass box. It is just the feeling of the control that the user gets. If somebody feels a bit colder in this kind of an environment, I have no refuge. I have no other place to go. If there is a building which has 4 different kind of spaces, which provides different kind of views outside, different kind of physical sensations, different kind of noises, and different kind of temperatures. A user is much happier to feel that control, that I can choose my environment where I want to sit, where I want to work. We have to move to that part, I think, in India. Second, what I'm scared a lot about is energy poverty when we talk about India. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, UK, the Europe started housing the lower strata of the society in individual houses because that was the easiest stuff to do at that point of time. And today we are seeing the repercussions of that. Scotland in 2023, 35% of the people were not able to pay the basic heating bills. We are talking about a first world country with a per capita income of more than $40,000. We are still at 3,000, and we are building so much for the LIG and the EWS sector to transport them into a high rise. And when we talk about the environment of Mumbai, the climate of Mumbai, that means that require a lot of energy for just meeting the basic ventilation requirements, a lot more lighting, and a lot more, the word maintenance came already a lot. So a lot more for communal services to just keep the building alive. So that scares me a lot. What will happen after 10 years? We have given a place for them to stay, but whether they can survive there or not. Whether holding a physical space is enough, or whether they have the means to convert that space into an house, an apartment, which they can pass on to the next generation. So I think that is something that needs to be looked into carefully. Another point I would just mention that whenever I work with the clients in India, everybody wants to do intentionally, everybody wants to do a wonderful project, and the starting point is always that we want to be very sustainable. But at the same time, there is not enough risk-taking ability in the architects as well as the developers. We want to do the building in conventional concrete. I do not want to mess up with the aesthetics. A glass-clad building is the best-looking building in a CBD. I do not want to mess up with the comfort levels. I want to maintain the comfort of the people only by reducing the air temperature. There are 10 other methods of making somebody comfortable. But the only method everybody wants to go for is pumping in cold air at 20 degrees and imagining that they will be happy. If this trend continues, that I want conventional solutions, we can forget about being sustainable. More than 50% of India that will be standing in 2070, the built environment of 2070, has not yet been built. So it's on up to us that we do the right thing. Raman made a wonderful point that whether we like it or not, high-rise is here to stay. The only thing we can do is we can do that right. At the moment, I see that we are not doing that right. So I would not like to close it on a pessimistic statement, but that is the reality.
That's a reality.
There is wonderful talent all around, and the good part is the investment flow is very stable and a lot more now. So investment is not a problem. We just increase our horizon a bit, be a bit more innovative, and nobody can stop us.
Sounds great. So I just wanted to know how many of the audience here is an architect. Can you just... Wow. And I'm sure all of you are quite aspired to understand this particular syndrome of a high-rise, high-density, which is there on all of our platter. 90 minutes is too less to address this particular topic, but the whole idea here is to have a thoughts, provoking the thoughts so that everybody understands and they take home some thought with them. And of course, you are all free to meet the panelists independently. Each one of them are having such a great wealth of knowledge. I personally feel very pressurized. How do I manage in 90 minutes to do justice for such a intense topic? But as I said, it's just an introduction. It's just an initial perception about the situation. That's what can be discussed on a forum like this. Because I can alone spend one full day with Chital discussing and debating. I can keep doing that with each one of them. But that's how the concept of a FOAID under the Built India vision is to create that awareness. So before I conclude and I open the floor to all the audience, I would like to ask one common question to all of you. Again, there are two questions in one question. First is, what is architecture after architect? All of us are here, who are here, are contributing our thoughts till the project is complete, besides the only gentleman here and the other gentleman there. So, have you tried to analyze, Kiran, the projects that you have done? How are they performing after 5 years? Is there any dialogue between you or your team with the end user? Same is with Debashish and everybody, the first question. And second question, one thing that you would like to advise for the better future for a high-rise, what would be that one thing? We start with. I want answer of both these questions. Little crisp and quick.
Yeah. Keep it very crisp. So, I think, I like to divide up the problem into two, I think, what all the panelists say. I think we are dealing with two issues in India. One is, of course, the residential sector, where some of the energy requirements, etc., what you're saying, come primarily, we have conditioned buildings only in the office sector. Residential buildings are not power guzzlers. They have other issues that one has to deal with and things like that. I think the problem in our country is that, yes, I think the issue comes in is that developers complete buildings and hand it over to the end user. And then, post-occupancy analysis is very, very poor or non-existent and things like that. And I think that there has to be some mechanism which I would encourage developers to do, to not wash their hands of projects, to really understand what goes on into the other projects. But that is currently sadly missing, I think. That's one issue. As a firm, we like to go back just to educate ourselves, not that we can do much about it, but just to not make the same mistakes. That's one issue. The other one thing that I would change, and that's something that is a pet peeve that I have, is that, we need to work with the authorities a lot more on, not on bylaws which are kind of, honestly speaking, rigid in terms of, open spaces, this, that. I think it needs to be, I think our bylaws need to change to a far more performance-based bylaws. By performance-based, for example, I don't know whether a lot of you know, China has a policy which is called, I'll just Googled it, it's called right to light. It's actually a policy which is called right to light. An end user needs, as a developer, you have to submit that, okay, how many hours of sunlight will a particular house, each particular house, depending on which orientation, how much light will they get. That's one thing. So right to light, sunlight, very, very critical. The second issue is water. I think the biggest problem that we are going to face is water in the future. I don't think it's power. I think it's water is going to be the biggest problem. Look at Mumbai. The situation is actually quite drastic. We look at how much the municipal water is available to you. Every society in Bombay, low end to high end, every hotel has to rely on tanker water, because what supply the city can give you is very, very minuscule. And I think, one needs to kind of, that's the other bylaw that I think needs to change and things like that. And there are great examples in cities like Singapore where, whether you know that you cannot even, Singapore, it rains right through the year, like Bombay doesn't rain right through the year, but we've got a pretty heavy rainfall. No storm water drain, nothing can be gotten out of your premises into the open system. You have to learn to recycle water and reuse water. We are way beyond that. The amount of sewage, water, etc. It's a cultural mindset, that's one issue, but it's also a kind of a responsibility that we need to do, because I think the city cannot provide adequate water for the kind of population that we are, and that mindset needs to change. I'm not blaming the authorities, but I think we need to get into a performance-based mindset. And last one example, a very simple solution, one has been talking about in the residential sector. We know most commercial buildings go for sustainability and look at performance because they're owned by a particular individual. A lot of REITs now own large buildings. Residential, that doesn't happen. And I think it can be done very simply. We have to get financial institutions to say that if your project is performance-based in sustainability, you will get loans. If most people take housing loans, you will get loan at a cheaper rate. I think that's one solution that will completely change. You don't need authorities, you don't need anything. You need the banks and the system, the financial institution to say that we will give you a loan which is 2 basis points cheaper than if your building is non-sustainable, and this will just change the damn industry completely. And last concern is I feel that the construction industry in India, we're still building very, very conventionally. We're doing high buildings, but I think it's just that, the amount of kind of concrete that we're pouring becomes bigger because that's what it needs to be. But I don't think the construction industry is really geared up to the kind of volumes that we're building today. I think that's one issue that I have. Again, I'm talking more about the residential sector. That's a bigger concern than the office sector, because the office sector is far more organized from the point of view of fire, safety, etc. The residential is something that is way behind, and that's what we're building more on. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Super, super. I think all your points are so relevant. Post-occupancy evaluation will give us tangible numbers. Tangible numbers can be measured, can be institutionalized. Very well said. Raman.
Parts, residential, commercial. Kiran Bhai said commercial is more organized, and more so, one, there's a single ownership in that. Second, there's a demand from the end user also that, to have a sustainable building, and that's also one of the three criteria which puts into the use. So it's more or less, we can better it. We can, obviously, there's nothing like static. We can better the commercial segment. But as the concern is, residential. So definite concerns, about energy. They may not be the guzzlers of energy, but we'll have to conserve the energy, because I don't think there will be equilibrium in that energy in this. So rightly said, water is going to be a big concern. Now, today, whatever we do, mechanisms to, rainwater harvesting and all, I think more needs to be done in that area. See, ultimately, we are converting a lot of this water into surface runoff, and it goes into sea, and it serves actually no purpose. I completely agree with him and on this thing. So I think a lot needs to be reposition and reinvent in the residential segment, because it's not only constructing whatever you may be constructing the best, but you're owning and operating. It's like you build an aeroplane and you need to have a pilot now to operate it. Then you need to have a appropriate the skill set to maintain it. So it's a mixed baggage which needs to be handled. So somewhere the regulation will have to come in, somewhere we also have to stand up and this thing. That's it.
Awesome. Sheetal.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot needs to be done. Sorry. So I think governance level, if you see, like I said before also, when a project is handed over by a developer, like though we have made a IGBC rated or LEED rated sustainable building, but the end occupant. So when like interior designers come into picture, or the end user is renovating the flats, so that time, are they using low flow fixtures? Are they using right energy efficient products? So all these things, there is no governance about this. So many products are available in market now. So we are still designing with NBC and everything, because we really don't know what end user is going to use. So I think residential is more critical, according to me, than commercial. So this needs to be looked upon.
So yeah. I'll just add on Sheetal's point. Actually, end user behavior also matters a lot. I have a very classic cases where customer asking for the flow has to be this, because it's the flow is very restricted in terms of we have controlled flow in that. But people are not happy with that. They want rain showers and this thing. So end user behavior also comes into play. Yeah. It's a very tightrope walk.
True. Yeah. Qutub.
I think you asked what are the changes in the bylaws which can be done. My question is, do we need so many laws which are there?
So many?
So many different laws, Why can't things be much more simpler?
Unified.
Why is no importance given to the aesthetics? Why is no importance given to the tropical climate that we are in? People are wasting so much time, and 33.7, 33.9, 33.10, 33.11, B, C, D, E, God knows. Why can't it all get simplified to something which becomes far more simpler and giving more time to making a more aesthetically beautiful and a sustainable city that we are living in today. So, we need a major change.
Yeah, very, very well said, Qutub. I do agree with you. I also personally feel certain laws, generic laws, cannot control the city's growth. It has to be a very flexible, it has to be a very inclusive environment. So there are a lot of solutions which we have been talking about where, because in Mumbai there are 221 wards and every ward has a peculiar difficult situation. They cannot be addressed with certain set of a generic rule. So there has to be a more innovative approach which will look into a much sensible performance-based built environment. I think one day we'll reach there. We should reach there very soon. Yeah. So, Rajesh?
Yeah, I already touched upon earlier. The wish is we have now state-of-the-art code, which is equivalent to international standards for elevator, which is equivalent to AN 81-20, IS 17900. What we need is potent enforcing of those electricity elevator rules. Otherwise, those will be in books and then total violations will keep happening. And that enforcement across India, as I mentioned, that is the one thing I would like to have.
Nice. I was also impressed when I spoke with you that nowadays through your command center, you evaluate the performances of your lift installment.
Yes.
And you actually do the life cycle analysis of your drive.
Yes.
And before it is going to die, you sensitize your client and
Yes.
change them. I think that's amazing. You know,
Yeah.
that's something which what Kiran was saying, the
Yeah.
post-occupancy evaluation. And if the performance index of a built environment can be measured at a much simpler level. See, it has been done for the commercial complexes, healthcare, hotel owners, but it has to come to the simple residential building level. I think
Yes.
lot will change because people will see the health of their building and naturally then they'll take the remedial actions. Ayush.
So Sandeep, the easiest way to reduce the carbon footprint of any project is to increase the life of a building.
Absolutely.
Is to increase the life of the building.
Absolutely.
And the numbers you presented in the beginning, the reality is even worse than that. A typical residential high-rise is staying alive only for 30 to 40 years compared to 80 to 90 years in Western Europe. So for the same built environment, we are spending 2.5 times the carbon. So I think as a country, we have to move from a reactive repair mindset to a preemptive repair mindset. I have a radical idea that whenever we buy an apartment, we should also pay for the first major retrofit of the project and the corpus keep on developing over the lifetime. So what Gautam was mentioning that after 25 years,
True.
the facade needs to be maintained. The money is already there in the bank. We know when the facade needs to be replaced. No permission is needed from any of the owners because when they bought the project, they already gave the money and agreed that on so-and-so date, the building will change
Require
its
the
facade.
next set of money. Yeah. A lot of people are doing, by the way. Huh?
Yeah,
Lot
that
of-
itself will
yeah.
increase the life from 25 years to at least 50 years and will help us a lot in longer run.
Interesting thing to this, many of the Norwegian countries have just started. See, they give you this embodied carbon points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not to
for the-
exceed. Not to exceed, yeah.
So you have not to exceed that. So your construction, you have to replace the material so that you are within that.
So, by the way, just to tell everyone, this law is almost on its way, whereby the carbon numbers will be declared also. At Indian Green Building Council, as a pilot version, we have already done 700 CO2 kg per square meter, not to exceed.
But-
If you do that, that's already a number which has been done. And I'm very sure very soon the numbers are going to come.
Sandeep,
Very
you're
soon.
very
So
true
let's
that-
be ready for it.
Yeah,
And
good start.
that's going to come for sure.
Sorry, I think a lot of profound thoughts here. I almost lost track of the question. So the question was building after when the building professionals leave the room, and then second is the
For
future.
question, after you have handed over the building, have you got a chance to evaluate the performance? And second question, one thing I allow you to change, what you would like to change in the ecosystem or in the statutory regulation?
I think in the interest of time, I've sort of combined my answer, and both of them allude to the same conclusion. First is about the feedback. And on a lighter note, I was in the living room of a building which I designed. The apartment belonged to a friend in Hong Kong, and after loosening up over a drink, I sort of opened up and asking him a question like, what will you do if you find a crack in the glass on the curtain wall that is covering your living room? And he said, I'll draw the curtain and I'll call my estate agent. I want to sell the house. So it's that at that level where people come with the experience, come with the education, and they do not know what product they bought into. I mean, we buy a car, we get a demo. We buy an appliance, we get a full demo. So I think to Kiran Bhai's question, it's something about user awareness of what systems they have gotten into and whether they understand how to utilize them and use them. And I think the future really belongs to user awareness. People need to understand what they've invested into, and then what kind of responsibility do they have in terms of long-term maintenance, whether it's about making sure the health of the structure, the MEP system, the facade system is at an upkeep. Normally people think, abhi kharid liya, abhi kuch nahi karna, you know, just have to keep, you do your puja, you move in and you're done, you know, you don't have to really look after the systems, call for professional help, get it checked. I think that is changing, although. Very, very heartening to see, but I think much more can be done there. And I think people need to be aware that, okay, I've paid a few crores, that's all, but I think there's long-term maintenance and long-term investments that need to be done at the right time to make sure you get the best out of that investment.
Unfortunately, in residential, you know, what happens when we buy a car, it's outside the showroom, it gets depreciated by 20-30%. And people still put money on it, maintain it. You get a house, it may appreciate with time, but still we are reluctant to maintain it.
Absolutely.
So that's a dichotomy, you know, all of us live in.
Yeah, that's true. It's one of the most expensive assets that we have in our life, and we give the least importance
It's the biggest
to it.
check we give for any, you know, lifetime.
That's true, that's true. But I think over a period of time, you know, the need is the first thing of innovation. So people will naturally fall into it.
So I agree with everybody that I don't think we have enough data on post-occupancy analysis, especially with regards to typologies of building, because I think there needs to be some sort of a quantitative system where somebody used to tell me if you can't quantify it, it's probably not true.
Absolutely.
So if there is a quantitative system for different typologies of buildings, I'll again take the thing of healthcare. We are forced to go back for post-occupancy valuation just because the equipment changes.
True.
Right? And there is a certain quantitative system for that, but it'd be nice if there was a quantitative system for everything else. With regards to high-rises, one of the challenges that most cities face is a lot of the redevelopment, a lot of the high-rise buildings are, you know, they are pockets of privilege, literally. What happens to the domestic help? What happens to the, you know, the servants and the people that actually serve this privileged few? Where do they come from? Tamil Nadu did an interesting experiment where they said every development over a certain square footage, you have to give 1% economically weaker section housing within that thing. That initially helped reduce a lot of stress on transportation.
For the support.
For the support. Of course, Kradai won and I went out the door. Rightly so. It will also be nice if the policymakers incentivize transportation hubs within these developments. They already do it for the metros. It'd be nice if you can do, you know, like bus. I mean, there are a lot of cities which don't have metros. You know, buses, Ubers, taxis. If they're able to incentivize it, I think it'll, the social fabric will be knit far better. And we are complex. Indian cities are complex. And a lot of Indian cities are work-home based. No zoning law applies, right?
Sure. Devashish.
Well, like what Kiran was saying, we do exactly that. I mean, if it's an asset that we carry on with, say it's a hotel or it's a commercial block that we keep owning, or a hospital for that matter, yes, we go in for certification because, yeah, that's our asset. Only lately have we tried one residential, and according to me, I don't know what we got out of it in terms of business, but it helped us. Sheetal will be happy to know that, you know, our energy requirements actually got lesser It didn't really give us any direct benefit, if you ask me, in terms of business, but that is something that I tried as an experiment, and it worked. It was helpful in various ways. I can go and get into the details of that. But yes, we can look into it. But as Kiran was saying, no. Regularly speaking, for the residential space, we don't even bother. What we need to do, I agree with what he just said. There is incentivizing out here for the, say, the metro line. If your station is within a certain radius, you get a consideration for the number of parking spaces. But it should not be a consideration. It should be that if it's close by, no more parking spaces, your parking spaces are reduced. That will help the city more.
Great. So, before I conclude, I would also say a couple of my points. First thing, if at all anything to be talked on a DC rule, I would say that we need to first look into our parking rules. I think insane. The parking rule that we have currently is absolutely disastrous. And we are actually going into a very challenging situation which will have a deep concerns for us in long-term and near-term future. So we need to relocate. And I fully agree with Kiran and Qutub. The rule framework has to be very flexible, very adaptable, very inclusive instead of creating a very complicated infrastructure. That's it from my side.